but the big thing is the story. Is the story correct? It's going to engage the visitor. And if it isn't strong enough, then the best technology in the world won't work. And we will hear that, of course, today. We have great contributors who've given us their time today, and we really appreciate that. Our Icelandic contributors have a more high-tech solution. They're talking about 2 more high-tech projects to tell old stories. And then our Irish contributors will look at the literary tourism area and ways to deliver that. So we've a nice mix, I think, and hopefully you will enjoy it. And if you take one thing away, it'll be a great day, I hope. The whole session will take about an hour and a half, we hope, and hope to get you out on time. And I'll just check to see if there's anything funny about the messages to say that nobody can hear you or anything. We're doing okay, I think. Wonderful. So, Bosh, everybody, I'm going to hand you over now to Elias, who will introduce himself and introduce the first speaker. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Maeve. And hello to you all. My name is Elias Gíslason. I'm the Director of Quality and Development Department of the Icelandic Tourist Board. And I am delighted to co-host this event today. And I'm also delighted to join the Laurentic Forum. Our first speaker today is Mr. Ásgeir Heiðar Ásgeirsson. He is from 1238, the Battle of Iceland, and he is the manager of it. His background is in tourism, event management, history and geography and teaching, and he has managed various projects over the year. So Ásgeir Heiðar, the floor is yours, and good luck.
Thank you, Elias, and nice to meet you all, see you all. I don't know what to say, know about you all out there. I'm going to start here by sharing my screen to show you some slides. And if I do this and then I do this, Elias will give me thumbs up if everything's okay. Thank you. So what I'm going to tell you about is a project here up in north of Iceland. It's not so, we're up in the north part of Iceland in a small area called Skagafjörður. We have around 4,500 inhabitants here, and in this small town of Sauðárkrókur of 2,600 people, I am running this this museum exhibition, what we would like to call it, called Battle of Iceland. The reason why we use this year 1238 is because we are telling a story that happened around that time. So I'm going to tell you about this project, and hopefully we can discuss that a little bit afterwards. But the idea of this project was to create a new magnet for tourism here in this town of Sauðárkrókur. It's not the biggest tourist area in Iceland, so the idea was to promote this area and bring more tourists to this place. Also add to an already rich variety of tourist stops in Iceland for heritage lovers and people who want to learn more about our history. Bring to life this saga, Sturlunga saga, which is the main events of that particular saga, battles that took place in Skagafjörður and this surrounding area. Those battles happened in the 1200s in Iceland. And I'm not sure you are, let me rephrase it, I'm sure you are not familiar with this story, but what happened in Iceland in the 1200s was that everything went pretty much berserk, and we had what we can only describe as a civil war. Different clans in Iceland fighting each other, which ended up with us losing our independence and becoming part of the Norwegian kingdom. All good to our friends in Norway, but it took us 700 years to gain back our independence, which we did in 1944. So this particular events in our history are important for us, and it's important for us to tell this story. And the reason we are telling it here is that these events took place here in this region. The method we wanted to use is use the latest virtual reality technology, augmented reality, to tell these dramatic stories. We also use more traditional exhibition technology as wall texts, remakes of objects as well as sets. So the main thing is to create an interesting museum tell the story with the help from technology, not for technology. Create an interesting experience by being true to the story. That's our main aim here. We set this up in an old factory buildings, which has rich history on its own. The reconstruction period here was 2017 to 2019, and we opened up here on the 15th of June, 2019, just in time for the pandemic. How we did it, the municipality here of Skagafjörður helped greatly with the project by renovating the houses that we are using. So the municipality owns the houses, and they renovated the houses. This firm that I work for, this company called Sýndarveruleiki, which means virtual reality, financed the development of these exhibitions, all production and installation, and is running this place, and put into that project something around 2 million euros. So this company is running this place. That's where I'm working, and we rent these houses from the municipality for 30 years. So we say this project was not made for 1 year, 2 years, 2 years, 3 years. We are here to stay. The municipality also run a tourist information center in the same house, so we share workforce and work together on this project. The houses we are using did not look that well in 2018, but looks much better now after this renovation. And we have around 1,000 square meters to work with here, so we have plenty of space. This model we are working with, so this exhibition is around this particular saga, focus on the main battles, the wide range of exhibition methods, as I mentioned, technical and traditional. We also have supporting operations that we run in this house. We have this little bistro, local food, where we focus on simple, fresh and healthy food from the area. We have a small shop where we have this souvenir that we can relate to the area. We also have tourist information center, as I mentioned, so there's plenty for guests to see here when they stop, and we focus on a nice experience. Then on to how this looks. Hopefully some of you will one day visit us, but this will have to do for the day. So we have this front desk and this information center here in our first house where you enter, and our bistro, our shop, kitchen, and everything that goes with this. Then in our 3 main exhibition halls, we have this different, what we can call technology stops on the way. You can look into a 360 monitor, see one of these battles going on in there. We have this interactive book that I will show you a little bit later. We do tell the story by texts on the wall, as I mentioned before. We are working on a project now called The Story in My Palm, which is a new idea where we will projector will put the story into your hands and you can play with that story. We'll see how that goes. It's being developed. We also focus on women's part in this Sturlunga age. We do work with one of the battles in augmented reality, where you can pick up iPads. I will show you that also later. And then we have remakes of weapons, clothes, and stuff from the time. And in here we have this 12 stations where we have people going into this virtual reality battle. On the way out, you do visit a burning house, which is one of the actual things that took place in this story, an arson. And if you do survive that, you can take photos by putting on costumes and weapons, which is very popular, of course, everywhere, no matter how old you are. But what makes us special is that this technology using virtual reality with interactivity. And that's the main thing we wanted to focus on. You go into this battle, as you can see there on the picture on the right, dress up in a armory almost, and go into this battle. It takes 10 minutes, this experience, and you're not just watching, you're getting involved, and we are very focused on that. You are taking part in the battle, not just watching a movie. We use the most advanced devices we could find at the time, at least. As you know, in technology, it's a big job trying to keep up with technology, but we do have a nice equipment with shock vests. And we also use augmented reality. That's the picture down there on the right, where we have this 3D cut landscape from the area here. You pick up the iPad and then you see an army out there on the ocean, and there's a fight going on there, actually our own only naval battle in our history. So we have varieties in this technology, but of course the virtual reality part, the 10 minutes experience is the biggest one. During the COVID, we had plenty of time, as most of you probably had, so we made this interactive book, actually working with a great company of Gagarin that Lemke will be representing here later. They helped us make this interactive book that I hope you can see on my video in the end here, a little bit more on how it works, but you can flip the pages and it changes what it says on the pages, and you can also press buttons to get more information. The focus here, emphasis here on the literature part of this era, because even though we were pretty much all fighting each other, we still found time to write some sagas at the time. Guiding lights here in our running this is to create a memorable, positive, good experience. Respect for history, of course, create a good workplace. We work closely with local people here who are working on similar things. We of course want to bring more tourists to the area to create more for everyone. We try to be involved in the cultural life of the area by putting up events and stuff. For example, there's a stand-up event here tonight inside the museum. And we also want to help build technological knowledge in the area by using virtual reality in teaching and also in cooperation with different schools and businesses in the area. So we want to try to be working on innovation as much as we can. We also like to help others when it comes to using VR and AR with guests. We of course have had some challenges during these years and learned a lot that we did not know when we started. So we want to be not just a museum. Being a museum is great, but we want to expand. We want to keep our development projects going on, keeping up with technology, keeping up how we use technology. We are working now on a digital audio guide with AR, where the visitors can play audio files, but it will be a little bit more automatic than maybe it had been before. And we also want to have this kind of AR guide following you through the museum. We hope to have that up and running for the summer, and our target is then to take that outdoors so you can visit places where these actual events took place. We are working on, of course, more languages, and we are increasing what we do in this development project outside the high season during the winter. School projects and different projects that we are working on. And I just want to say into this group listening today, we are very much open for cooperation with everyone that finds this interesting. Bigger focus on international cooperation. We also, at the moment, are doing some, you could say, pop-ups. We are going as guests to other museums and historical places to see how we can fit in with others. We are working on opening up one exhibition like that in the Viking world in Reykjanesbær, right next to the international airport in Keflavik. We will open that in a few weeks. And then we are working on other places similar. We have had some recognition, fortunately, in last years. And we were nominated for this European Awards Heritage in Motion last year, which we are very proud of. And we have had great receptions from the local community and great luck with funding in our development project here in the area, which we are thankful for, of course. To wrap it up, the future, hopefully we will see an end to this pandemic. We will hopefully see a slow growth in attendance here in Sauðárkrókur. That's our aim, at least. We want to make this kind of a hub for developing and going to other places and work with other people. And as I mentioned, please be in touch if you see something here that you find interesting. Pictures, of course, in the end here tells more than all these words. These are pictures from the inside. Upper left there you can see our bistro, which is actually an old shop. You can see pictures from inside the museum. We're working with, of course, this red design. It was a very bloody period in our history. Here you can see more from inside the virtual reality hall and from our shop. And I was going to end with putting on a video here that I hope will work. It's actually just straight from YouTube. That shows you a little bit more about how this works.
That was amazing. I didn't expect it to be like so just circular, like everywhere. I actually interact everywhere with it and turn and be able to see it all. It was actually amazing.
That was great. I like that my chest was like vibrating. And then when you get to grab the rocks and throw it, I think I killed like maybe 5 people, hit 5 people. It was pretty accurate. It was a great experience. I would do it again.
Yeah, so that's it. Thank you for listening, and sorry about taking 2 minutes over time.
I think we would have stayed longer watching that. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Really, yeah, great feedback. People love it. I think we're all heading to Iceland this summer.
Yeah, welcome. You're welcome.
And beautiful music too. Thank you so much. Wonderful. So we're going to change tack a little bit now. Thanks so much, Oshkel. We're moving on to Mary. I'll give you a bit of a profile on Mary first, just as a background. Mary is a lecturer in the newly formed, well, it's a long-standing education institute, but it's just been given university status. Mary is a lecturer in strategy and tourism in the Department of Marketing, Tourism and Sport at the Atlantic Technology University in Sligo. That's the background you'll see behind Dean Branigan, actually, the beautiful Ben Bulben. She is currently a member of Sligo Destination Working Group, which is a task force with Fáilte Ireland, our local tourism authority. She has lectured as a guest lecturer in the Algarve and in Florida, in Valencia, Spain, and she's a former director of Sligo Tourism, so she's a good background in tourism. And I note also she worked in the Mayfair region in New York, and I didn't get to ask you, Mary, whether you were making beds or running the hotel. But for those of us who spend student years making beds, it's a good introduction to tourism, and it's the ground up. But Mary, we're delighted to have you today and looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
Hi, Maeve, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you perfectly.
Oh, that's fine. Sorry, I just ran. And is my, can you see my presentation?
All good, we can see full screen.
Oh, good, that's good. I just had a slight technical hitch there.
Sorry, all good.
That's great, thank you very much. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary McGuckin, and I would like to start this presentation by telling you a story. So in 2014, there was a family visiting an ancestral graveyard in Balahy in County Derry. And they were visiting the grave of Seamus Heaney, who is probably one of our most loved poets here in Ireland. Sorry, I just want to bring this. So in the family, there was an 11-year-old boy, and he loved the poem Midterm Break. And he'd learned this poem at school. And in the poem, Seamus Heaney, some of you may know the poem. The Irish among you will definitely know the poem, I would expect. But Seamus Heaney tells the story of returning home from boarding school when his brother Christopher was tragically killed in a road accident. And in the graveyard that day, there was a man at another graveside, and he started talking to the family, as Irish people often do. And the young boy told him about the poem and told him how much he loved the poem. And the man proceeded to bring the young boy and his family to the grave. And the grave was where this young man, Christopher, this young boy, Christopher, was buried. And the man went on to tell him the story behind the poem. And it turned out that the man was actually, and I've highlighted here in blue, he was the baby who cooed and laughed and rocked the pram. So in those moments, the poem came to life and the story became real. Now, that 11-year-old boy is actually down the corridor here. He's actually my son, Dermot. And to this day, he remembers meeting the baby in the poem, a man now in his 70s. So the reason I tell you this story is to give you a sense of that authentic experience of engagement that we often, talk about when we talk about literary tourism and storytelling within literary tourism. And what I'm going to do throughout my talk here is just to give you some examples of, real life examples of literary tourism and storytelling. And hopefully at the end of the session, you will actually be able to imagine your own, as I would call it, your graveyard story that will bring your experience to life. So I'm going to start off with explaining what literary tourism is, as this is kind of a lot of the work that I do in terms of my own research. So what literary tourism is, it's very simply, it's really about people who are motivated by a desire to visit places that are linked to literary works or to the authors, to the writers involved. And this montage of images that you have in front of you here will give you a flavor of the different places and the experiences that, are associated with literary tourism. So I'm starting off in the top left-hand corner here. And first of all, we have Shakespeare's birthplace in Stratford-upon-Avon. And beside that, then we have Dublin. And Dublin is a UNESCO city of literature. And it's home to many writers, including James Joyce, who you can see here in the image. Now, if there's any fans of Dan Brown's books in the audience, you could do a Da Vinci Code trail through cities like Paris or London or Rome. Or you could visit the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam, where you would have a very thought-provoking and probably a very emotional experience for most of us. Now, moving closer to home, in the bottom corner, familiar again to some of you, we have the contemporary Irish writer, Sally Rooney. and she wrote the book Normal People. And you can see this, the book is set in Sligo and also Dublin and a number of other locations. But I just wanted to choose that scene, and it's tied in with Ian's scene in its background and a number of references to Sligo today. But staying with Sligo, we go into the center of the screen here, and I have two images associated with our very first Nobel laureate for literature, who's W.B. Yeats. Again, so closely associated with Sligo. We have his grave there, but we also have the Lake Isle of Innisfree, which is immortalized in Yeats's poetry. In the corner then, again, I'm kind of moving away. In New Zealand, you could visit, or you could even stay in one of the Hobbit homes that are depicted. They're part of the fictional Middle Earth in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. Or if there's any Swedish people in the audience, they will be very familiar with it. But many of us maybe are fans of Stieg Larsson, the writer. And if you go to somewhere like Stockholm, you could partake in it's called the Millennium Trail. So again, part of those novels. So the common denominator here are stories. And I suppose stories, these are a wonderful way to engage with an audience and to share our experiences and to share our stories as well. And through stories, we can learn, we can be entertained, we can connect with people. So stories are the common denominator through all of this. And you can see here in this quote from Visit Scotland. So again, I suppose I'm from an academic background. I have a lot of the literature gathered, but I'm just going to summarize the reasons why we use storytelling. Well, first of all, I would say that I think people just love to tell their stories and they love to share their experiences. And we've had generations of this. So storytelling can also define the reputation of a place or an experience. It can highlight its true vision or its meaning. And even if you engage with your audience, the audience then can have a role in terms of co-creating their own interpretation of a story. Now, storytelling involves story building, which involves like building, creating, developing a narrative and a plot. And it also involves story listening as well. So there's different elements to this. And I suppose, what we're seeing more and more is where storytelling is using a whole range of media. And that helps to communicate more effectively, but it also helps to spread the story as we share it more and more. So I want to move through just a few examples of storytelling initially. And I've chosen our neighbours in Scotland because I think Scotland is a very good example of best practice in storytelling. And this particular year, 2022, is actually Scotland's Year of Stories. And Scotland is celebrating its stories, and that includes those stories that are written, they're created, or they're inspired by, or they're just connected to Scotland. So it's very interesting. And what they're doing in Scotland, like the residents and the visitors will experience a diversity of voices, and they'll also take part in a range of events associated with this particular celebration. Now, looking more closer to, focusing a little bit more on Edinburgh. Edinburgh is a city of literature. And if we look at the one in the bottom left, right-hand side, I should say, this is Invisible Edinburgh. And I just chose this. I thought it was just an interesting example. And this is where you can take a themed walking tour in Edinburgh. But what really intrigued me about this particular one was that all the tour guides have all experienced homelessness. So it's a social enterprise. But they are all steeped in the city's culture and its stories. So I think it's quite a unique experience. And another quite unique experience, and you can find this in Dublin as well, like you've got the Edinburgh Literary Pub tour, but again, this would be performed by professional actors. So I think it's quite interesting from that perspective. Oh, sorry. So why do we use digital storytelling? Again, there's lots of literature in this area, and I'm not going to get caught up in that, but I suppose I just want to summarize a few of the key reasons why we use digital storytelling. And you can see some of it highlighted here. Well, first of all, I suppose it has, it offers agility and even the ability to modify the story, even in simple terms. It also has this ability to produce very creative and immersive content. And one of the academics in this area describe it as dream content. So again, it's interesting from that perspective. And it also provides digital, I suppose, storytelling also uses some very interesting platforms. And we've seen it in the last talk, and I think we're going to have some more examples shortly. And these interesting platforms can be used to reach and engage with new audiences. So there are many advantages to digital storytelling. So again, I want to take you through now a few examples. Again, these are different examples from different locations. So I'm going to do it in a clockwise manner so you can hopefully follow what I'm saying. And we're going to start up in the top left-hand side, which is Imagine Online. So on the 20th of March, just a few weeks ago, it was World Storytelling Day. But in Scotland, again, we're still in Scotland, they held an international storytelling festival. And in the festival, they staged 11 storytelling performances. And in the performances, they challenged their audiences to imagine the past, the future, and a timeless other. So again, just a nice and interesting concept. The second one, again, still in Edinburgh, but this is, I don't know how well you can see it on the screen there, but it's an example of a cross-art form collaboration. And it's called Message from the Skies. And it ran through Hogmanay earlier this year in Edinburgh. So what they did, every year they have a different theme for this particular Message from the Skies, as it's called. And this year it was all about climate emergency. And they used the words of Scottish contemporary writers, and they also had a specially commissioned soundscape. So what it ended up resulting in, and I don't know if you can get a sense of it here, a vibrant animated display, and it was projected over the heads of the audience. So again, just as you can see there, I think we're only getting a glimpse of it here, but I mean, an amazing, amazing creation, an amazing design. Litcraft is in the top right-hand side here, and Litcraft is a resource that was developed by Lancaster University. And what they did is they developed a scale model of classic literary works using Minecraft. Now, anybody in the audience who have kids will be familiar probably with Minecraft, the gaming platform. But what the creators of Litcraft were trying to do was to engage children. So were trying to make the works, these classic works, accessible through, textual as well as digital format. So again, an interesting, an interesting approach. In the corner, bottom right-hand corner, we have the Literary Roots, which is a free app. It incorporates text, audio, and images, and it was developed by the Literature Museum in Holland. And it has lots of literary stories, and it has anecdotes, and it's designed to guide, visitors on literary walks. And you can download it. I have it on my phone. You can download it on your phone and you can use it. Now, thankfully, I am going to move closer to home, and the image at the bottom in the middle is an image from the Museum of Literature Ireland, which is located on Stephen's Green in Dublin. Now, 2022 marks the 100th anniversary of Joyce's famous Ulysses. And the Molly, as it's called, this Museum of Literature Ireland, they have commissioned a cinematic reading of Ulysses. So there are 18 episodes or chapters in Ulysses, and through this Molly project, they have commissioned a series of short films, one for each chapter, each episode as it's called, and they're actually now available. Some of them are available on their website, but on Bloomsday, which is the 16th of June, they're going to have the whole film, the entire film is going to be shown on Bloomsday because there's a big celebration planned for the 16th of June. The final image on this slide it's called Storyteller, and Storyteller is very different again, but what it is, it's a web app that has been developed by psychologists and literature experts. And the purpose of it is to help children to boost their to help parents, I should say, to boost their children's well-being through using storytelling and conversations. And I came across this through a wonderful place called the Verbal Arts Centre in Derry. So again, that's just a slightly different approach again. So just a few final examples, just to conclude my presentation. So if there's any Ian Rankin, anybody likes crime thrillers in the audience, you may know Ian Rankin, the famous Scottish writer. And if you're a fan of Ian Rankin, you can actually visit some of his locations and the crime novels, and you can follow Rebus, his famous detective, through the streets of Edinburgh. And last year, they actually had a competition. They ran a competition, and if you won a prize in the competition, you would join Ian Rankin on a tour of Edinburgh. And he talked about all the different writers associated with Edinburgh. But again, I just think, just a nice, I suppose, idea behind Rankin's Edinburgh. On the right-hand side, I have two images connected with Shakespeare, and they're both relating to the world-famous Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. I was lucky enough to visit that and do a study of that about 10 years ago. So it still stays with me, that experience. And the one on top is called Shakespeare's Treasures. And really what that is, it's a flash interactive, and it's developed for display in the museum. And it really provides a whole new level of interaction with the exhibits in the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, the actual house where Shakespeare was born. Shakespeare Alive is slightly different in that it offers podcasts, and these are again available on the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, their website. So what it does, it features guests from all around the world, like theatre professionals or bloggers or artists, and they speak about how they are trying to keep Shakespeare alive in the 21st century. So again, just a different approach, all using digital platforms. You'll be glad to know the very final example is in the bottom left-hand corner. And again, very different again. It's from it's called Trails and Tales. It's a digital app, and it was developed for a park called the Calderstones Park in Liverpool. It was developed last year, and using this, you can use a smartphone or a tablet, or you could scan a QR code. There's wooden posts all throughout the park, and you can scan a QR code, and you can listen to these audio recordings, and they use familiar voices, people like Maxine Peake or Claire Skinner, and they also have photos. And it's all, they've selected different pieces of literature relating to like famous writers like George Orwell or Jane Austen. And again, it's really, I suppose what it's doing is kind of bringing literature to life as well. And by the way, the Ian Rankin example, we would call that in literary tourism, we talk about living literature or living literary. So again, it's where it brings literature to life. And that's where digital platforms would have a great role to play. So the very final slide of my presentation, I wanted to leave you with a quote from our current ambassador, the ambassador of Ireland to the US. And he's a man I admire a lot, because Daniel Mulhall, you can see him here in the photograph, he has a great knowledge and he's a genuine interest in Irish literature. And he's actually used this to promote Ireland all over the world. So just in a recent publication, I'm actually reading his book at the moment, and it's from that book that I took these quotes. He says, "It so happens that Ireland enjoys the advantage of having a literary tradition that attracts international attention and admiration. Soft power diplomacy is the current buzzword used to describe this phenomenon, which is a very real asset for Ireland." So I will leave you with a final thought. How can you use that soft power in your story to make it even more engaging, authentic, and memorable? Thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was fantastic and very inspiring. And interestingly, later on, Stephen will talk a little bit about what you spoke there about the digital solution to sharing poetry through posts outdoors and QR codes and that kind of stuff. So thanks very much. If you could unshare now, please. I'm going to introduce you now to our next speaker. I'm delighted to welcome Ian Branigan. Ian is Head of Regional Development with the Western Development Commission. This is an organisation that fosters growth in the Western region of Ireland. With a degree in physics and an MBA, he's currently working on a doctorate related to creative economy and regional development. Hugely ambitious project, I would imagine. In 2015, he led the effort to run the national commemoration marking the 150th year in the birth of WBA, so you've heard about a bit already this morning, engaging over 13 million worldwide. So with that, Ian, we're delighted to have you with us, and thank you so much. I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks very much, Maeve. Just before I start, is everything okay on the screen there? You're never sure of the
Perfect.
tech.
We can see the screen and we can hear you. Thank you.
That's great. Well, Mary couldn't really have set me up any better. I think Elias, Askill and Mary have just done a great job. And Mary finished with one of the things I was going to begin with, actually, with talking about Dan Mulhall and that great concept of soft power. As you said there, I'd like to just give a very quick example of what literary tourism means when it goes large. Because with the Battle of 1238, we've seen how it can go big in countries. Well, we, with the 150th anniversary of Yeats, got an opportunity to do this internationally as part of our decade of commemoration. And the key partners when we did this, so for 600,000 euros, we engaged in a year-long program focused around the Nobel laureate William Butler Yeats and the attendant literature. The key partners were Tourism Ireland and the Department of Foreign Affairs, hence Dan Mulhall. At that time, Dan was actually the British ambassador, and he came to Sligo often during the year. For that 600,000, we got equivalent value of over 10 million euros. We also reached 34 million people. And when I mean reached, they engaged meaningfully in Yeats over the whole year. So that's the size of the prize in terms of a really big tourism program and how that can really help in terms of literature tourism. So I thought I'd start with that. I also thought that I'm hearing about the Icelandic sagas, but also in terms of literary tourism, we have products like the Kalevala in Finland. We have the, in Norrskö, the Stieg Larsson connection in Sweden. And all these things cross languages and cross international boundaries. So there really is a sense to the tourism community to look at the culturally curious, how they can move around and follow these stories in their favorite orders and get involved in both the landscapes that inspire them and the people that inspire them. And I think this is something that we need to come back to at the end of this. Now, it would be very remiss of me not to give you a little bit of overview on who's speaking and what we do. My name, as Maeve has already said, given some of my background, but I work for the Western Development Commission. Essentially, whilst UDROS are brilliant on the linguistic regional development, we have a specific geographic regional development here in the west of Ireland. The easiest way for people not from here is anything west of the Shannon, the big river that comes down the country, is kind of where we're involved geographically. We've been around since 1998. We're a small independent state agency under the Department of Rural Development and Community Development. We report into the Minister Heather Humphreys here in Ireland. So we're linked to the government as well as having a remit for socio and economic promotion and development here. In reality, we do it in three main ways: development, investment, and policy. And as you see, in recent years, we've supported 5,000 jobs. We currently have an investment portfolio in excess of 70 million. We are currently engaged in over 13 million in EU projects. And we lend to over 42 communities within our region. So we're deep and we're wide in the whole regional development, hence our interest in literary tourism. The team dedicated to Europe is small, and it's actually smaller than I'm showing there because Gordon has just departed for the Department of Transport. So we're currently looking for some help if people are interested in joining our team. And on our website, which the link is in the chat sidebar, you can see there are sort of links to all of the other European projects. We work very much in circular economy, literary tourism, mentoring, SME development, green economy, blue economy. So I'll leave that all for later because it's not what we're looking at today. And as I say, in the EU, in terms of the last decade, we are actually nearly 30 million in total project value. We've supported over 400 SMEs, 24 new products have been developed and 41 publications. The link is there, and I'm sure Maeve will send this on to everybody afterwards, and you can just look at all of this in detail because I'm going through it too quickly. What we have is nearly 100 European partners as well. So many regions around the screen are represented, and for people interested in European projects, we can nearly always find a good party to try and support your idea. So Spotlit is the literary tourism pioneering project we have on the back of working on Yeats. We're involved with the City of Literature, the UNESCO City of Literature, Edinburgh. We're involved with Wigtown and their Literature Festival. We're involved with Kainuu region in Finland. We're involved with Arts Over Borders, who curate and develop literary performances across the world in Northern Ireland, and the University of Lapland. Very, very diverse set of partners, all looking to move literary tourism, both on the conceptual and development side and also on the economic side forward. This is how it looks geographically. The link there is very similar to the Laurentic footprint and very similar in thematic content to the literary stories we've mentioned before. As I say, it's a 3-year project, which is now coming to an end, but it has a new offspring called Enlight, which we will hopefully submit in June and should give us another 3 years of really bringing immersive technology to the performance-based literary tourism we have had experience over the last 3.5 years. We have done it in the last 3.5 years in a most unusual way. What happened to us really was COVID. Unsurprisingly, it happened to everyone. And what had been intended to be a very deep economic dive into making literary tourism a standalone product to augment the existing regional tourism product ended up being a pivot for a lot of our SMEs to move digital technologies. And for some people around the screen, they're well advanced in the use of these immersive technologies, but we have many small, the sector is characterized by many people, both on the support and on the delivery side, who are what we would call micro SMEs, very small organizations. And as such, a lot of them had to rethink what they wanted to do during the Spotlit project because of COVID, because they couldn't interact with their audiences. But by and large, what we did was we came up with 6 different products in terms of themes. We came everything from digital apps to literary networks to framework models and business exchange networks. And I'll go through some of them in a little detail before we depart. A quick geographic map of where the products were distributed. You can see there we had apps came from Finland. The Wild Atlantic Way literary performance model, of course, came from Ireland. And in Northern Ireland, we had the Wild Things concept. And again, as we come on, the Young People Literature model in Dumfries and Galloway in Scotland with our friends there in the Wigtown Festival. So a little bit about the doing in terms of literary tourism. Well, one of the great things that happened was Arts Over Border brought, from the background of the locality's connection with Wilde and Beckett, they brought to Enniskillen a whole new literary tourism product. The main one, there were 2, but the main one was probably 150 gold leaf swallows based on Oscar Wilde's work, where they physically put golden swallows across the whole town, and each location came with a story and an interactive opportunity for tourists and locals and the community to engage with it. And this was very, very good because the learning from our SMEs from the west of Ireland who went there, how do you get business on board with literary tourism, was, well, if you have a swallow outside your pub and you name a drink after Oscar Wilde, suddenly there's an activity for tourism or tourists to engage in. So little things like that were shared learnings that came out of this. There were other things that Arts Over Border did, but as I say, these were very successful in their own right, as you can see some of the swallows there, and also brought people into the literary environment from a not too oblique manner, so it was easily accessible. Similarly, in Dumfries and Galloway, we had the opportunity there to do a program, and Wigtown did this, where they called it the Storybook Dumfries, and the project aimed to promote really Dumfries and Galloway as Scotland's home of children's books. And this was something that was again very successful and has a legacy in years to come. The apps are self-evident. We thought these were a sidebar and have now become a mainstay of the project. In fact, Stephen from Great Experiences, we've already discussed with him ways in which we can use their technology and their nous in order to develop some more of these experiential apps for tourists to actually participate in more going forward. And then the Wild Atlantic Way performance models are perhaps the most interesting from the local point of view, and I'll come on to them in a second. Really, this was a way of, initially we were going to do a big performance-based thing that would show literary tourism and tour Ireland and internationally to show the best of what we have. Because of the pandemic, we had to rethink it. And one of the most beautiful things that came out of this rethink was the Lighthouse project with Danny Gill. There's a link on the next page, and I really encourage you to do it, because essentially her concept was 6 lighthouses around the coast were involved in a multidisciplinary experience for people. So in Sligo, in Mayo, in Donegal, in Galway, they partnered locally with creative groups to bring products that people could experience. So one of the ideas was Mutton Island in Galway, where you could see artwork on the way to the lighthouse, whilst listening to new art and new literature, whilst experiencing visually the whole scene of a walk out to a lighthouse. The concept was everything had to be within the light radius from all these lighthouses. So we got a sense of place as well as a sense of person doing this. And this is very successful and continues to engage quite a lot of communities and tourists in a real new way of using soft digital technology with the power of the landscape and the people. Equally, we had the second performance model was based on Brendan McAlvely's work. He worked with some of the great literature talent we have, and he brought with them stage shows and films. We were starting to come out of COVID. And what I'll leave you there is the link into the one around handiwork based on the work of Sarah Baum. So that's something that I think not only do we have now, but becomes digital content for the future. As I say, 28 literary products came from those 6 original ideas, and they were dispersed by all the partners around the area. It wasn't just the products. We had 60 SMEs engaged in the west of Ireland. I know there were 8 to 10 in Northern Ireland. So in total, it was probably up to 100 literary tourism SMEs. So if you're feeling you're alone, that's not the case. There are many people interested in this area. And as an augmentation to the general tourism program, I think it's something that is working quite well. So I'll try and wrap up at this point by giving you some tangible examples. And as I say, you can always come back to me with questions afterwards. We had the Yeats Tour Ballylee Society, again, grounded in literature of Yeats and Beckett and Shaw in this case. And what they've done is they've used the money that came through the actual Spotlight product incubation program to develop online content that has moved them from a certain point to now being able to extend out into international and domestic audiences through things like QR codes at their location, through things like video contents like the Flaggy Shore in County Clare. And these is a number of the videos there that hopefully you can link into if you get the presentation and see what they mean in realization. Similarly, we had bookshops like Tertulia in Westport. They developed the Philosopher's Hat Club based around an open mic type approach to philosophy. And they developed digital content to augment this. And they continued throughout the pandemic and were very successful. Similarly, Artisan House in Letterfrack, a very remote and beautiful part of the country. And the Books at One bookshop there offered festival and access to people to literary products. And then also the Blind Poet Raftery in Kilchimar, the Kilchimar Tourism Organisation, have now moved from a relatively modest initial look at this to something that really looks set to grow over the years. They're going to use Facebook Live or they have used it at this point, to bring festivals into people's homes. And now they're looking for a more immersive experience going forward with their product and thus extend literary tourism experience. Also, we had in Carja Arts Festival here, they developed 2 literary strands to their arts festival, Carja Word, and also a literary trail. And you can see here a very nice graphic of their cooperation that we actually help support with the Lux Theatre Group in Donegal. So lastly, or coming to the end, we also have a literary network. This is meant as a high-level guidance for literary tourism going forward. We did it very much as a pilot. It involved Poetry Ireland, Tourism Ireland, the local authorities, cities of literature across it, and creative entrepreneurs. Now, this is something we'd hope to grow in the next project because we think it's very important that we look at the digital audiences because if you look at 1238, that's a figital in the sense that you can physically go there and experience digital immersive moments, but we also now know that there is some hesitancy on people to travel, so we have to figure out how we monetize these experiences. There are a series of templates also in the Spotlight program, and I think you can find many of them there. They're designed to help SMEs, and as I say, it's a very applied approach which augments the work of Mary and others. And in conclusion, I'd just like to say, during the last 3.5–4 years, it has been a surprise to us in the WDC that literary tourism businesses are actually resilient, strong, and grounded in their region. And we found that in Finland, Scotland, Northern Ireland, etc. So I think this is something that we need to keep going with. And I think what we really need to do, rather than perhaps try and ring fence literary tourism, is to see it as a part of a much bigger play in experiential tourism. And I think this is something that allows us to reach out and have strategies in our quite peripheral, but often delicate regions, which actually can only take so many tourists. And what we really need to do is figure out a way of engaging people more so we can get more revenue, but also a little bit more momentum into our regions through digital means and through digital storytelling. And Sinead, go to Mila
Mila Mahagapain, Ian, Vishishin Harvey Spatial, really very informative. And I think the big, I'd love to explore further. We won't do today is the whole commercial application. And you know, it's I think art and creative arts, it can make money, it should make money, and it's not a bad word to make money. And I think that's something we're always trying to emphasize, I guess, with our clients and people who are developing tourism attractions. I'm now delighted to introduce you to our next speaker, and it'll follow very well what we've just heard from. Stephen Ford works with Great Visitor Experiences and has formerly worked in the tourism sector in New Zealand and Australia. He's currently sales and marketing manager with Great Visitor Experiences, which provides interpretive visitor apps and online ticketing services for visitor attractions, museums, activity providers, and all that kind of thing that we've been talking about and listening and hearing about today. So I'll hand you over to Stephen and looking forward to hearing from him. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maeve. And Ian and Mary, I think have set me up quite nicely by touching on the project that we have in place at Tour Ballylee. So I'll just give a bit of context on the company, on what we do, the product that we have in place at Tour Ballylee, and then how it's kind of running and what we're trying to do and what we want to achieve by putting in place that pilot project. So the company was founded by our CEO, Ivan, in 2019. And Ivan had previously worked for the biggest private commercial visitor attraction operator in Ireland, a company called Shannon Heritage, operating King John's Castle and Bunratty Castle. And from his time there, he kind of saw a gap in the market for how an attraction would communicate with its visitors while they were on site. So he went away and developed the technology, rolled it out in 2019. And then, as a few of the rest of you have outlined, the pandemic happened. And since then, we've kind of had to rethink how we position the product, come up with a few more, and just kind of work towards the needs of the market as things have kind of developed, as we're moving back into a more normalized sector. So our proposition is that we enable our clients to better understand their visitors, manage their online operations, and to tell their unique story beyond what the visitor can see. And I suppose that's our tagline is, with anywhere, even with this this image of Loophead Lighthouse in the background, you know, you can see the static building, but there's so much more to it than that. When was it put in? Who built it? When did it stop operating as a traditional lighthouse? When did the last families leave there? How many people live there? Everything that happened in between. There's a lot to be told about any particular site. And our integrated products allow our clients to focus on the stakeholder that matters most, which is the visitor. So if you have, you know, a good visitor experience, people are going to come back and tell their friends and draw in more visitors. So as I said, we're a technology company focused on growing the visitor destination economy for experience-led sites such as museums, heritage sites, visitor attractions, tour companies, and activity providers. And the products that we have developed help to increase revenues and profitability and improve the visitor experience in a more sustainable manner. We have 4 pillars to the product. There's the interpretive visitor app, which was the original product, directory resource that called the All Ireland Destination Guide, where we're just showcasing and promoting everything conceivable to see and do in Ireland as a tourist, as a visitor, and that we have that exists currently on the Great Visitor Experiences app, and will be rolling out into its own standalone website next month. We've also developed an online ticketing platform as well to help all of these sites, the museums, heritage sites, visitor attractions, tour companies, to sell tickets online, and the destination management portal, which is kind of the back end of our system, where you can manage all 3 of the visitor app, the destination guide, and the ticketing platform from one very simple and easy to use login. So the interpretive visitor app, why would an attraction input it? What are the benefits that it would offer? So it allows for the translation of the existing content in place on the site in up to 8 languages, and it can be communicated. This is all communicated through the user's smartphone. So there's no need to input new hardware or anything like that. A person, I suppose, in our mind, with the coverage of smartphones globally, that I think it's above 95% in Ireland, they're coming to the site with the hardware already in their pocket. So immediately that's a reduced spend for the attraction. They don't have to go away and get a device or anything like that. The traditional audio guides to translate the content can be very easily translated and provided on the user's own smartphone. it's removing the spend for site brochures and information sheets. And this is a huge cost for a visitor attraction year on year to produce brochures, possibly in multiple languages, produce site maps, and anything like that. It's a huge cost. It doesn't really give any great feedback to the attraction or to the site. You know, there's the possibility that it ends up as waste or as littering the site, and there's the even bigger possibility that it ends up lying in boxes in a hallway somewhere waiting to be discarded year after year, because the content can get quite dated. Whereas with the visitor app, the exact same content can be used, but it can also be updated as you add different parts of the attraction, if you get in different exhibitions, or if things happen on site that move with the seasons. The visitor app technology allows each site to tell its enhanced story with minimal impact on its environment and on the infrastructure. So the likes of the 1238 building in Iceland is kind of purpose built to tell a story, but there's a lot of heritage sites here in Ireland and throughout all the countries represented here that aren't purpose built for interpretation. They're kind of a historical space or a heritage space, and you don't want to overwhelm them with endless amounts of interpretive panels on the walls and everything like that. You want to leave the space and its natural aura in place. So what we do is we tell the story through QR codes on site, which can be really small, really discreet, and don't overwhelm the actual place. You're allowing the site administrators to manage, edit, and evolve their curated content and provide it directly to visitors in real time. So with any site, you're undergoing.
Stephen, I want to stop you for a moment, because we had a few people saying there's a lot of popping on the microphone. I don't know if you can fix it, but if it's a different audio, or if you can.
Do you know what I'm going to do? I might just change my audio. So yeah. I'm going to do that for one moment. So
yeah, just because there's a lot of popping out. It's not too bad here, but some people are finding it hard to hear.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's better, much better. Thank you, Jean, for pointing it out.
Sorry about that. It's probably the new and fancy headphones are not as good as these traditional. So yeah, I was just talking about allowing the site administrators to manage, edit, and evolve their curated content and provide it directly to visitors in real time. So any site where you have visitors coming in is going to undergo renovations, where you're going to be closing off parts of the building, or you're adding in new things. As I said, there's different things that could be happening with the seasons or different events, and you want to be able to communicate to visitors, you know, in an almost live setting, as if to say, you know, okay, something happened on site yesterday, we have to close a part of the site. Let's communicate through the app and let people know what's happening, or talk about future works or historical works or reasons why different parts are not open, rather than just leaving a static sign there. It's storytelling in a sustainable and cost-effective manner. So what we mean by the cost effective, we did a bit of a short survey in the last few weeks and realized that the spend for paper materials for visitor attractions in Ireland can be on average about €5,000 a year. Again, you're getting nothing back off of those. You may even be incurring costs twice by having to discard them or dispose of them. And the sustainability aspect, I suppose, comes in that the user's device is already in place. The servers on which our content is hosted is Microsoft Azure servers. So they're at 70% renewable energy, powered by renewable energy at the moment, and they're moving to 100% by 2025. And the QR codes themselves, they can be inputted on aluminium composite or different ways like that, renewable materials throughout the site. So you're really not impacting very much on the site. People would often say to us as well, oh, I don't want to get rid of my tour guides with technology. We would always say, well, don't ever get rid of your tour guides. They're an invaluable resource and they would provide an excellent experience. But what the app would be an additional resource for them to kind of say, look, I have my 45 minutes or my 60 minutes for the tour, but there's more information available via the app. And with the staffing crisis in the tourism and hospitality sector in Ireland at the moment, you know, the visitor app could kind of stand in place for tour guides and during off-peak, just to say, look, we don't have a tour guide here for the moment, but there's a resource there for you to self-guide to the site. It's also utilizing the full bank of resources available to an attraction, to audio, text, video, and imagery. Just like there's any site that's been open for decades or centuries has a bank of content that it would be impossible to bring to a visitor over the course of a 1 or 2 hour visit, but you can certainly bring more of it to life through an app. And as I said, you can move it along with the seasons and just provide it in different ways to people throughout the year. For the visitor, the content is available in a visitor's own native language, you know, which provides an invaluable visitor experience if you're trying to meet people halfway and to kind of understand where they're coming from. The presumption that people have a good level of English, you know, isn't always an accurate one. So by having the multi-language capability on site, you're providing an enhanced visitor experience. You're telling the story beyond what the visitors can see. There's our tagline again, to a number of different forms of media, using actors to bring stories to life, which I'll demonstrate a bit more when I talk about our work with Tour Ballylee. Musical and visual narratives told through pictures and videos, both historical and current, and the enriching of soundscape, which I kind of actually just realized yesterday when I was at Tour Ballylee meeting with some people, where I was kind of showing them the app with the actual natural environment of the river running, the birds, and the rain as well. You had the natural soundscape, but you were also getting a different perspective on it. The in-app sitemap that we build as well within the app, again, replaces that paper map, but it provides routing and navigation to key points of interest, just to make sure that a visitor can hit all the points that are considered to be particularly important at the site, so they're not going on TripAdvisor afterwards and saying, you know, mean things about the site, to say, oh well, they said they had this, but I didn't see it, so therefore my experience has to be told to the world. And again, it's a sustainable and environmentally friendly means of bringing walking trails or on-site stories to life. It's very low impact. I think it was mentioned about the park in Liverpool hosting the QR codes on posts and everything like that. You don't have to input any new infrastructure on any site. The QR codes can be mounted basically anywhere to tell the story, so you can input a walking trail at your attraction, at your heritage centre, in your town, in your village, very, very easily. It's allowing each visitor to attain more information on topics within the attraction that are of particular interest to them. So any attraction you can have the amount of stories that you can have behind it. Again, going back to the Lighthouse, you can have, you know, people who are very, very interested in the actual light itself, people who are interested in the building, people who are interested in sailing, and you know, there's people interested in history, people interested in flora and fauna. You can tell all of those stories, provide that information through the app. And you can also access special offers and discounts that are sent out through the app. So Tour Ballylee, and Ian, I'm using the same picture that you use because it is quite stunning. This is Tour Ballylee, a 15th century Hiberno Norman tower, most famous for its association with the Nobel poet laureate W.B. Yeats, who's been mentioned a few times, and one of many great poets that we have here. Seamus Heaney also mentioned, referred in Mary's very, very nice story about her son, referred to this building as, in cultural terms, one of the most important buildings in Ireland. And Yeats's thinking for restoring the building, or his words about it, I'm just going to have to, sorry. His own words they're engraved in stone on the side of the building. I, the poet William Yeats, with old mill boards and seagreen slates and smithy work from the Gort Forge, restore this tower for my wife George. And when all is ruined, the characters, sorry, I have the line blocked out, but I'm sure you can read it again. But when I think it's when all is ruined, the characters remain, or something to that effect. And I've said it to the Tour Ballylee Society, who I've enjoyed working with for the past 6 to 9 months, that, you know, if the tower came down in the morning, the QR codes would still be there telling the story, and it is certainly a fantastic story to tell. As I mentioned, this was a pilot site for us, so we went looking at it from a number of different angles, as in, could we set up an audio trail, could we set up a digital trail, and a number of different focuses. But another focus that we wanted to look at was the sustainability of our offering and its alignment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because sustainability is a very key concern for tourists now, for visitor attractions, and for, I think it should be for all of us, because we all have our part to play. So we looked at the infrastructure and looked at the goals and kind of saw where we felt there was tie-ins. So goal 9, which is the goal to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and to foster innovation. So we would say that the app is resilient infrastructure in that it allows a story to be told for years and years and years, again, with very low impacts. And, you know, as long as the website is live and the QR codes are there, the infrastructure, or that's the infrastructure we need to tell the story and help the characters to remain. Goals 12 and 15, which relate to ensuring sustainable consumption and production patterns, and protecting, restoring and promoting sustainable land use. So again,
we're not impacting on how the land really is used in terms of the storytelling, the sustainable consumption piece. You don't need any paper resources at the site to be handed out to visitors. You can just say, look, we have an app there. You can scan the QR codes and access the information. Goal 13, which is to take urgent action to combat climate change. Again, through the app, you can edit and evolve the content constantly, but you can communicate to your visitors, this is what my attraction, my heritage centre, my community is doing to combat climate change in the area. This is what you can do as a responsible visitor. So you can kind of communicate to your visitors that work through the app as well. And this is another perspective on the site itself. It's had a tough couple of years, probably. A huge work has gone into preserving the story and to keeping the place running. Before COVID was ever an issue, flooding has been a constant issue for the team on site. And you can see in the picture on the right just how high the water has gotten. That has happened, I think, multiple times in the last decade. And the building has actually been shut for 3 years as opposed to the 2 that most other sites experienced with COVID, and they're actually happily due to reopen on Saturday for the first time in those 3 years. But the threat of flooding has constantly existed to them, and it's a testament to the dedication of the volunteers there that they keep getting these knocks, keep reopening and providing a wonderful storytelling experience on site.
Ballylee River, Cool Park in Ballylee, 1931. Under my window ledge the waters race, otters below and moorhens on the top. Run for a mile undimmed in heaven's face, then darkening through dark raftery's cellar drop. Run underground, rise in a rocky place in cool domain, and there to finish up, spread to a lake and drop into a hole. What's water but the generated soul? This river was also the location where Maureen O'Hara crossed the water in the 1952 film The Quiet Man. Ballylee River, right. Cool Park in Ballylee, 1930.
Sorry, it's just playing a bit too enthusiastically for me. But
Ballylee River, Cool Park in Ballylee, 1931.
Apologies.
Stephen, we are going a bit over time. Do you have much left?
No, not much left at all. Sorry, that was just some of the information that's available behind the QR codes. This is how the QR codes are presented on site. That's somebody, an actor, reading poems that Yeats wrote at this site, providing that immersive experience to visitors. So sorry, I meant to give a bit more context there, but it played on click, unfortunately. And yeah, this is just a touch on, I suppose, the case study for us, and we have a visitor survey that I have a link as well that I'm going to share with Maeve and the team to be shared out to everyone afterwards. The kind of requirement and request from the society at Tour Ballylee and our solution through the Interpretive Visitor app for that. And just a quote there from Rena, who is one of the leads on the society. Yeah, and there's a couple of links there. A link to an article in the New York Times about this site, a couple of links to our own case study and our visitor survey. And that's me. I apologize for the few little technical flaws, but I'd be delighted to answer any questions about this project.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. And yes, the research on how we make attraction financial independent and even profitable is very important. There's no question about that. Hopefully, because we are running a bit over time, Krista, are we going to be cut off at 1400, or is Lemka going to have enough time for her presentation?
No, we won't be cut off, Elias. It'll be fine if we go over.
Okay, good to hear. So Lemka here is going to tell us about the Lava Center in Iceland. Lemka is an interaction designer at Gagarin, interactive in Iceland. And she creates concepts for interactive experience, for museums and exhibition. And in her work, she presents audience with a new angle of perception or tries to seduce them into unexpected encounter. So Lemka, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'll try to keep your attention after all this time. Yeah, just a quick introduction about me. Thank you, Elias. I am an interaction designer. I work for a company called Gagarin, and we create interactive experiences. So the experience I'm going to show to you today is called the Lava Center, but this is not the only thing we do. We do like lots of museums experiences. Also actually something about language. I hear a lot of other speakers talk about language, but today I'm going to talk about volcanoes and how to make them speak. So in 2010, maybe people remember that there was this unpronounceable volcano that exploded called Eyjafjallajökull, and all around the world, well, mostly in the Northern Hemisphere, it sort of stopped all the air traffic. People were stuck in several places in the world, and there was this one Icelandic person who, while being stuck, had this great idea, like, we can do something with that. This makes us very special. Let's create an experience center, like an exhibition around volcanoes. And that's where we came in, and we created a concept for this exhibition. So we are a company, we do interactive storytelling. We want to inspire audiences, like, it's very playful, but still educative. And we are a group of people, we're a mix of illustrators, animators, software developers, interaction designers like myself, project managers, obviously, animators, and electrical engineers, that we create these experiences. So these are very digital, very high tech, but what we say, we don't like to see technology. So we create some sort of experience where the technology is not that in your face, so to speak. Talking about interaction design very quickly, how I usually explain it, if you have like more traditional way of storytelling, is you have information, you sort of send that out, and you are the receiving party. When we talk about interaction, you as the receiving party have a bit of influence on that story. And what we try to do is like tangible interaction. We want people to use their whole body, whether it's their sense of, you know, maybe left or right, size, vertigo, smell, touch, all those kinds of things. If you involve that in an experience, we believe that these experiences can be much more memorable, so to speak. And I think the presentation from Oshket was really great, showing this, you know, even with the vests that like reset, like vibrate when you probably get like thrown a rock at your head or something. So about the Lava Center, this building was created specifically for the exhibition. The building holds more things, like there's a restaurant, there's a large like shop and facilities, and there is this specific exhibition. Now the exhibition is located in the middle of 5 active volcanoes. So it's in the south of Iceland, and while standing on the deck that you see here in the top left, you can actually see all these volcanoes in a distance. And this is something that is quite alien for a lot of people. Like, people in Iceland are kind of used to, there are active volcanoes, but what does this mean when you're living there? So for the exhibition, like very briefly about the concept, we have 4 consecutive spaces. And the concept that we used here is like to zoom in. So we start from very high up and we zoom in to get closer and closer to the place that we are located in Hvolsvöllur. And then we have these corridors in between, and these are more sensory experiences to give you sort of a break of the information experiences. So I will take you through the exhibition. I will like share a bit of insight on what our thoughts were in the concepts and the ideas behind it. There's a lot of moving images because most of the things we make are interactive, and I feel like it translates it best when we have video. So I hope it's not too shocking. In the lobby area, this is an area that is open for everybody. You don't need to buy a ticket or anything. But what we're doing here is sort of staging the scene. Where are we? We are in Iceland. Iceland is a very active island. And here you can see at the back, there's about 6 stations on the wall. And each of these stations show live how many earthquakes there are happening. There's constantly earthquakes happening because Iceland is growing. It's on top of the rift of two plates, so it's growing apart. And you can see how fast it's growing, where the earthquakes are happening, etc. And you can see it live now. So this is like quite like technology that is connected to measuring equipment from the meteorological office there. So here we want to stage like, okay, you're standing on ground that is alive. This is moving, it's breathing, you know, it's like a little bit of a daunting introduction. If you buy a ticket, you basically enter the next place. I'm not sure if you hear the sound here. This is a corridor that basically sucks you into the exhibition. Here on the left, you can see an interactive wall that once you step into the corridor, it triggers this light show that sort of creates these lava waves, magma waves into the corridor. So it's as if you're underground. And the cool thing here is that the soundscape that is happening in this corridor has been created with the actual sound waves that were created by the magma movement of Eyjafjallajökull in 2010. So the actual sonar recordings have been worked into the soundscape of this corridor. So you step in and you're being sucked into this corridor where all the eruptions of the past 100 years are displayed. And we left a few spots open for eruptions to happen as we expect that to happen. So we're entering this long corridor, and at the end of the corridor, we enter this room. We have, here we focus on the creation of Iceland. I always say Iceland has basically two parents. One parent is the tectonic plates moving apart, but there's also a mantle plume underneath, like in the core of the earth that basically pushes Iceland up at this ridge. Here we have a large wheel. We call this a wheel of time. This is an interpretation that we make more often. And by spinning this large wheel, you basically spin a history of 30 million years. You can see how Iceland was created by moving tectonic plates, etc., and how it came up through the surface. This interaction allows the visitors to have control over the storytelling. So it's not like the pace that you want to experience this in is all your own. You can stand around, you can read all the information from multiple sides, and it's really as if the earth, like the earth is sticking through the ground, so to speak. Another thing, like I've been talking about what is interactive, like tangible interaction. Often I ask you, like people or the audience, but I cannot see you, but I'm pretending I see you. So when we talk about distance or size, if we talk about 33 centimeters, 13 inch for our non-metric system friends, is like, how much is that? And usually people, it's like a very natural feeling to start measuring something with your hands. It's about this big or something like that. And we wanted to use this sort of natural movement in order to explain one of the most told facts about like Iceland. So they say Iceland grows 2 centimeters per year. But if you want to calculate that, like how much was that in my lifetime, or how long does it take to grow this much, you always have to sort of calculate and be cognitively engaged in this sort of calculation. So we created this interactive where we ask people to basically measure their hands, and they get a direct feedback of how long it took to actually grow that much. It's like a very subtle interaction, but I think it's very nice for people to experience it like that. After this, we go into a corridor where people are surprised by an earthquake. So we have a shaking ground. I don't have video of that. So I'm going to continue to the next room. But this earthquake feeling is a big surprise, and that kind of touches upon the point of earthquakes. You never know when they're going to happen, and it's always a surprise. Moving to the next room, like I said, Iceland has sort of two parents. Here is the mantle plume, and here we explain how the mantle plume is basically a force of magma, like pushing from the core of the earth outwards. And we decided to give people a different perspective of this. So we are always standing on land, and thinking about this in some sort of graphic, but in this room, we basically placed people at the bottom of this mantle plume. So bottom, so when you look up, you basically see Iceland sort of balancing on top of this mantle plume, which sort of emphasizes the sheer force of this plume of magma, and also puts you in a position like, oof, who am I in the world? You know, how important am I compared to all these geological sort of forces that are around us? Again, this plume is like, it has a light show inside. I think in the whole exhibition, I think there's like 2 or 4 kilometers of LED strips worked in to create these visual experiences. So we've went from like looking up and now we zoomed into a bit closer, looking at the mantle plume. Going to the next room, we are looking at the volcanoes themselves. So we come one step closer to where we are in Kolsvöllur. So here in this room, we have these interactive stations, and this is like really a digging station in terms of very there's a lot of content, like how do volcanoes happen, what kinds of volcanoes are there, what are their characteristics, how long do they erupt, and things like that. Since this is a lot of information, we really wanted the interaction to be very simple and very straightforward. So we created these sort of overlays over the screen, where the only thing you do as a visitor is follow blindly with your finger along this sort of slot, and you can feel and like scrub back and forth through this story. So here you can see someone going through the story. You basically build up the volcano. You can see how the magma chamber is working underneath, and the whole setting is like these sort of projections down as if there's glowing lava going around. Someone actually heard someone say, like, holding their hands over that projection, saying like, oh, I thought lava was hot. I didn't know it was that cold, thinking that it was actual real lava. So these are like really more like detailed stations about how volcanoes work, very geological. So in these few rooms, we've been very, in a scientific approach to the volcanoes. And then we got this last corridor, we created a smoke experience, like a sensory experience, like what does it actually feel like if an volcanoes is erupting and there's a lot of ash, like you cannot see much and it's very thick and it's a very heavy experience. But unfortunately we had to remove this interactive because some people really didn't see enough, and it was a bit too real for some people. So we had to, we created something else, but we got what we wanted, but it was a little bit too intense. Now we went through all of these spaces, and always when I talk about this experience or this exhibition, it's like with volcanoes, they're so big, it's like we can never create the real thing or recreate the real thing. So we always look for ways to abstract and like interpret these sort of beings through these sort of experiences. And we get to the last room. The last room is a very big panoramic view. And here we put in all the actual volcanoes that are located around the museum. You can see some spots here on the floor. And these spots are interaction spots, basically. So when you step into one of these spots, happens. And what we wanted to do here is sort of change the approach a little bit. So we've been looking at mountains as volcanoes as being these mountains, these geological beings, right? But if we look in the olden days, the volcanoes had a very different meaning. They were mythological. They were like creatures, beings, so to speak. And in Icelandic language, they also have names, and people talk about her and she. So they have these characters that we really like to use here. So once you step into an interaction spot, you can see each of these volcanoes presenting themselves in a bit more like storytelling way. So I'm like very old, I've been around, I'm not sure if I'm gonna erupt another time. There's another one like, they used to call me Gate to Hell because I'm, so active and things like that. So they give we give them a little bit like characters, right? Because we think mountains are old and that's that. But in geological time speaking, some of them are really old, some of them are really young, some are just starting, you know, they're just erupted a few times and they'll be very big. Then still like to explore a little bit more about these volcanoes. They have interaction spots, and you can, as you can see the girl here in the picture, you can trigger these spots by, again, a very natural behavior. Like when you're looking at the landscape, you're standing there, you're pointing at things in the landscape to talk to your friends. So here you can point at certain points, and it tells you how often it erupted in the last years, or how far away it is from where you're standing, etc. So here you see a little bit about the interaction. You trigger these points and it says it's 50 kilometers away from where you're standing. In the meantime, the whole environment is timed in such a way that one by one, they're erupting these volcanoes. And if Tindfjord, one of the big volcanoes, if it actually will erupt someday, it will be quite catastrophic because it's a really, really big volcano. It's not very likely that it will, but it could happen. That's kind of the point. So you can see the effects of each of these types of volcanoes. So we've been through the 4 spaces, and then we arrive back in the main hall where we have a last station where you can watch interviews with people who actually live close to the volcano. So again, for these people, volcanoes are very different, are not just these geological, you know, from your geography books things, but they live with them and their experiences. So by puzzling layers together with the idea of, you know, layers of ash in the ground, you puzzle people together, and they there you can follow the interview that they gave about living so close to volcanoes. So thank you. I've been racing through it a little bit, but I hope you got something out of it. Yeah, we're on online, and you can check our website. We have lots of different experiences. Also, like a lot of augmented reality, virtual reality lately that we've been developing. Yeah, so thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Lemke, and this was very interesting. Since we are going a bit over time, I think we are going to cut the questioning. So I would like to thank all the speakers for the contribution, as well as all of you that have been watching this live. This session and the Mars session will be on Hospitality Newfoundland and the Laboratory YouTube channel next week. I would also like to thank Maeve for co-hosting this event with me, and Krista Svetland from the International Program Officer at Fisheries at Marine Institute of Memorial University of Newfoundland. And she's a member of the Blue Economy subcommittee at the Laurentic Forum, and she gave us the full technical support for this event. I also want to thank the steering committee at the Laurentic Forum, and we will soon post our new event. And finally, I would like to wish you all a good day. Happy Easter. That is to those of you that celebrate Easter. And thank you all, and enjoy your day.
People are still exiting, but yes, I'd like to mirror what Elias has said. Thank you so much. I'm dying to get traveling.
Yeah, there's a lot
Donna,
of
there's a few left. Is there anything else you want to say, Donna, as people are leaving? There's a few of our guests still here, but that's fine.
Okay, yes, I'd like to say, coming to you live, I've actually called the Newfoundland Embassy. I'd like to thank everybody who logged on and took the time to participate. I hope they found it as informative, as inspiring as I did. And I'd also like to particularly thank the panelists for donating their time and sharing their projects with us. It was all very, very, very brilliantly done. And I guess a special thank you to Krista, who gets landed with everything at the last minute and pulled it all together for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, and fare thee well. Have a great Easter, a great break, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.